shadows of inheritance. The cathedral in downtown Chicago loomed like a sentinel against the gray winter sky, its spires piercing the low-hanging clouds on that fateful December afternoon in 2025. Snow flurries danced outside the stained glass windows, but inside, the air was thick with the scent of lilies and the murmur of hushed conversations. My father, Adam Hargrove, the titan of the logistics world, lay in his polished mahogany casket at the front, surrounded by wreaths of white roses. He had built Hargrove Logistics from a single truck in the 1980s into a $600 million empire that spanned continents, moving everything from medical supplies to high-tech gadgets. Now, at 78, a sudden heart attack had claimed him, leaving behind a legacy and a powder keg of family secrets. I, Jessica Hargrove, stood in the shadows near the back pew, my black wool coat buttoned tight against the chill that seeped through the stone walls. At 32, I was the invisible force behind the company's success, the one who had spent the last decade in freezing warehouses, negotiating cutthroat deals with suppliers, and optimizing routes that saved millions. I missed my best friend's wedding in Paris because of a supply chain crisis in Shanghai. I skipped birthdays, holidays, even my own engagement party, though that relationship crumbled under the weight of my absences. My bonuses, funneled right back into the company or stashed away for emergencies. No one saw me as the heir apparent. To them, I was just Jess, the logistics whiz, a glorified secretary in their eyes. Up front, my brother Zachary, 35 and the golden child, stood tall in his tailored suit, his arm draped possessively around his wife, Samantha. Zach had always been the face of the family, charming, photogenic, the one Dad paraded at board meetings. But charm doesn't build empires, it spends them. Samantha, with her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and diamond earrings that caught the light like tiny stars, leaned into him, whispering something that made him smirk. She was a social climber, married to Zach for 5 years, always pushing for more, renovations to their lakeside mansion, private jets for weekend getaways. Today, she wore a black dress that screamed designer label, not mourning. The service dragged on, eulogies from business partners praising Dad's vision, his ruthlessness in deals, his quiet philanthropy. I listened, my mind drifting to the late nights in Dad's office, where he'd confide in me about Zach's potential that never materialized. "He's got the name, Jess," Dad would say, "but you've got the grit." I nodded along, never pushing, always supporting. Little did I know how much he'd been testing us both. As the priest wrapped up, Samantha stepped forward uninvited, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She cleared her throat, addressing the crowd of executives, family, and coworkers like she was hosting a gala. "Thank you all for coming to honor Adam. As many of you know, Zachary will be stepping into his rightful role as CEO of Hargrove Logistics. We're excited for the future, expanding into new markets, perhaps even a rebrand." She flashed a smile, her eyes scanning for reactions from the board members. Whispers rippled through the pews. Coworkers from the office exchanged glances. I caught a few raised eyebrows from the operations team I'd led for years. Zach nodded approvingly, puffing out his chest. "That's right, Dad always said the company stays in the family." His voice boomed with false confidence. I felt a knot in my stomach. They hadn't even waited for the will reading. Peter, Dad's chief of staff and my quiet ally, caught my eye from across the aisle. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired and sharp as a tack, the one who handled the real dirty work. I gave him a subtle nod, the signal we'd agreed on weeks ago when Dad's health started failing. The casket was closed, but as the organ music swelled for the recessional, a low chuckle echoed through the speakers. Heads turned. It was Dad's laugh, deep, rumbling, the kind that filled rooms. Gasps filled the air. Peter had activated the hidden audio system. "Hold on, folks," Dad's voice boomed from the speakers, pre-recorded but vivid as if he were there. "Before you all scatter, I've got a few words." The massive screen behind the altar flickered to life, showing Dad in his study, looking frail but fierce, time-stamped just a month before his death. He leaned forward, eyes piercing the camera. "If you're watching this, I'm gone. But let's clear the air about the future of Hargrove Logistics. Zachary, son, you assumed you'd inherit it all. Firstborn, right? Tradition. But tradition doesn't pay the bills." Zach's face drained of color. Samantha gripped his arm tighter, her knuckles white. The congregation froze, the air electric with anticipation. Dad continued, his voice steady. I gave you every chance, Zach. Loans for your ventures. The Miami nightclub, the vintage car dealership, that yacht charter business. Millions poured in. But let's review the results. A spreadsheet appeared on screen, projected for all to see. Line by line, it detailed the failures. $2.4 million into the nightclub, bankrupt in 18 months after wild parties and embezzlement scandals. $1.8 million for the car business, liquidated after Zach borrowed inventory for personal use. Another $900,000 on failed investments in crypto and real estate flips. Total debt, $6.2 million. These weren't gifts, Zach, Dad said. They were loans against your inheritance, secured by your equity in the company. You signed the papers, remember, thought it was just formality. Zach staggered back, his face ashen. No, Dad, what? He muttered. Samantha's eyes widened in horror, her composure cracking. Whispers turned to murmurs. I spotted my coworker Lisa from accounting, her mouth agape. She'd always suspected Zach's expense reports were padded, but this was public evisceration. Dad's image leaned closer. You squandered it all on excess, parties, cars, vacations. Meanwhile, Jessica, he paused, and my heart pounded. Jess worked in the trenches. She fixed the inefficiencies that saved us $12 million last year alone, negotiated deals in sub-zero warehouses while you were yachting in the Mediterranean. She missed life milestones for this company, and when I told her about your debts, she didn't gloat. She acted. The screen shifted to bank statements, my bank statements. Transfers from my savings, bonuses I'd accrued over years, totaling exactly $6.2 million, wired to Dad's account just days before his death. Just paid off your debts, Zach, Dad said. Bought your equity fair and square. The company is hers %. No contests, no loopholes. The board's already approved. Chaos erupted. Samantha shrieked, "What, you idiot!" and shoved Zach hard enough that he stumbled into a pew. Bankrupt, you said we were set for life. Her voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Zach turned to me. Pleading, Justice, you can't. We can work this out. Family right. I stepped forward, my voice calm but steel-edged. Family? You treated me like staff, Zach. Ignored my warnings about your spending. Samantha, you called me the help behind my back. I pulled an envelope from my coat, termination papers prepared by Peter. Your access is revoked. Company cards, email, everything. And here's a repayment plan for the $200,000 you borrowed from petty cash last year. Monthly installments. Don't miss them. Samantha's face twisted in rage. You sneaky bitch, this was supposed to be ours. She lunged toward me, but Peter intercepted, his hand firm on her shoulder. Ma'am, the doors are locked until this concludes, he said evenly. Security, discreetly positioned, moved in. The coworkers' reactions were a mix of shock and vindication. Mark from sales whispered to his wife, I knew Zach was a fraud. Remember those team-building trips that were just his buddies? Alina from HR nodded furiously, her eyes wide. The audit last quarter. This explains the discrepancies. Even the board members, who'd long favored Zach's charisma over my competence, shifted uncomfortably, realizing the empire they'd trusted was built on my unseen labor. As Dad's video faded with a final, take care of it, Jess. Make me proud. The screen went dark. The organ resumed, but no one moved. Zach collapsed into a seat, sobbing. Samantha stormed out a side door that Peter unlocked, muttering about divorce lawyers. I felt a weight lift, not just the company, but years of resentment. Peter clapped me on the back. Your father planned this meticulously. He knew they'd expose themselves. We exited together, snow crunching under our feet. My phone buzzed, texts from coworkers. About time. Congrats, boss. That was epic. I drove back to the office, not as an employee, but as owner. The skyline glittered, the city alive with holiday lights. For the first time in years, I felt free. But let's rewind. This didn't happen overnight. 10 years ago, fresh out of business school, I joined Hargrove Logistics as an analyst. Dad insisted I start at the bottom, no nepotism. Zach, meanwhile, waltzed into VP of Operations, a title he barely earned. I slogged through data, spotting waste in our trucking routes, overlaps that cost $500,000 annually. I fixed it, got a pat on the back, and moved on. Zach, he threw lavish launch parties for new divisions that flopped. His Miami nightclub idea came during a strategy retreat in the Bahamas, company funded, of course. "It's diversification, Jess," he'd say, waving off my concerns. Samantha egged him on, envisioning herself as a mogul's wife. They'd host dinners at their mansion, where I'd overhear her bragging about our empire. Dad saw it all. In private, he'd share the numbers, Zach's ventures hemorrhaging cash. "I'm testing him," Dad confided one night over whiskey. "Giving him rope." I nodded, but it hurt watching the company our family's blood drained. When Dad's health declined, he revealed the loans. "Zach thinks they're gifts, but they're documented. If he fails, it's on him." I could have let it burn. Instead, I scraped together every cent, bonuses, investments, even selling my condo. Why? Not for Zach, but for the 5,000 employees depending on us. For Dad's legacy. The transfer cleared days before his heart gave out. Post-funeral, the fallout was swift. Samantha filed for divorce within 48 hours, citing financial misrepresentation. Zach called incessantly, begging for a bailout. I blocked him after the 10th voicemail. At the office, the atmosphere shifted. Coworkers who dismissed me as Zach's little sister now sought my input. "That video, mind-blowing," Lisa said in the break room. "We all knew he was coasting, but $6 million, damn." I restructured immediately, cut wasteful perks, promoted from within. Profits soared 15% in the first quarter. Zach, he slunk away to some consulting gig. Samantha remarried a tech bro. Me, I finally took a vacation, a quiet cabin in the Rockies where I reflected on Dad's words. "Greed reveals character, Jess. Yours shone through." Years later, at a company gala, someone asked if I'd forgiven Zach. I smiled. "Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's moving on." The empire thrived, a testament to grit over greed. And in quiet moments, I heard Dad's chuckle, approving from beyond. But the story doesn't end there. Let's delve deeper into the intricacies of that day and the web of deceit that unraveled so spectacularly. The cathedral, St. Patrick's, was chosen by Dad himself in his will, symbolic, he said, of enduring foundations. As guests filed in, I noted the mix: board members in power suits, suppliers with wary eyes, and our office staff clustered together like a Greek chorus. Samantha worked the room like a pro, air-kissing cheeks and dropping hints about big changes. "Zachary's vision will take us global," she purred to a VP from FedEx. I overheard, biting back a retort. Zach, ever the showman, posed for photos near the casket, his tie a bold red against the somber black. "Dad would want us to celebrate life," he told a reporter from the Tribune. Inside, I seethed. Dad hated ostentation. His will specified a simple service. Peter, ever vigilant, slipped me a note during the hymns. "All set. Signal when ready." He'd been Dad's right hand for 30 years, privy to every secret. Together, we'd rigged the AV system weeks prior, uploading the video under the guise of a memorial slideshow. When Samantha made her announcement, it was the trigger. My nod to Peter and the chuckle played. The acoustics amplified it, sending chills down spines. One elderly aunt fainted. Ushers rushed to her. Dad's voice cut through. "Sit tight, everyone. This is important." The spreadsheet was damning, color-coded reds for losses, with footnotes on each failure. The nightclub, parties with celebrities that devolved into drug busts. The cars, Zach selling rare Ferraris under the table for quick cash. Coworkers gasped. Mark whispered, "I processed those invoices, thought they were legit." Samantha's reaction was pure theater. Her shove sent Zach sprawling, his phone skittering across the floor. "You ruined us," she hissed. Guests averted eyes, but the damage was done. Social media buzzed later, leaked clips from phones, hashtags like inheritance karma trending. In the vestry afterward, Zach cornered me. "Jess, please, I can change. Give me a division to run." Tears streaked his face. I handed him the envelope. "Change starts with accountability, Zach. Pay back what you owe." Driving away, Peter in the passenger seat, we laughed, nervous, relieved. "Your father was a genius," he said. "He knew they'd overplay their hand." The office the next day was electric. Emails poured in. Support, congratulations, even anonymous tips on more of Zach's misdeeds. I addressed the staff in the conference room. "Hargrove is ours now, built on merit." "Not birthright," applause thundered. Months passed. Samantha's divorce made tabloids. She got the mansion, but little else. Zach faded into obscurity, last heard selling timeshares in Florida. I expanded the company, green initiatives, AI routing, partnerships in Asia. Profits hit $700 million by year's end. Reflecting now on this crisp evening in my penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, I raise a glass to Dad. Greed exposed them, sacrifice elevated me. The story? It's not just revenge, it's justice, hard won and sweet.